Good evening, everyone. My name is Anike Neverdon Edmonds-Coates, and I am the Director of Development and Strategic Partnerships at Associated Black Charities. And I'm glad to welcome you to a part 2 discussion about college degree requirements in the workplace and their impact on Black workers. Tonight's Equity at Work virtual conversation is convened from the perspective of employers who have made commitments to shift away from college degree requirements in roles where other experience or skills are applicable. Our guest leaders tonight will share from their workplace experience some of the questions that ABC is asking, such as, are college degrees a racialized barrier to employment? And what steps are being taken to modify common hiring practices that currently eliminate otherwise qualified candidates? They also hope to answer some audience questions later in the session, so please drop your thoughts into the chat or the Q&A box. We're honored tonight to be hosting representatives from Accenture, the Baltimore City Health Department, and the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We're deeply grateful they agreed to participate in this conversation this evening, which represents the beginning of a needed and very important shift within the workforce development community. Tonight's session is a part of ABC's ongoing webinar series entitled Equity at Work. All sessions are free and explore the application of racial equity in both the workplace and our wider community of practice. ABC works across Maryland as an educator, advocate, and supporter to eliminate race-based structural racism and barriers and advance long-term solutions that create new opportunities for African Americans to thrive financially and build a stronger economy for all. These virtual conversations are just one part of our programmatic work to uplift and create economic equality for Baltimore's Black workers. Please visit abc-md.org to learn more or support our mission. Without further ado, we welcome you to the conversation, and I turn this evening's mic over to Jason Perkins-Cohen, Director of the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Employment Development. Thank you.
Thanks, Anike, and welcome guests. We're excited to have this conversation tonight. We're gonna kick it off with introductions and then a few questions for the panelists, but we definitely wanna hear from you, so please feel free to jump in, put your questions in the chat. We can turn this into more of a conversation. So Anupa, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll go to Naila.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and everyone. I'm really looking forward to meeting with you and chatting. So please, any question is fair game. By way of introduction, my name is Anupa Upadhyay. I'm a managing director at Accenture. Accenture is a global consulting company, and we focus on helping Fortune 500 companies excel to meet their business outcomes. I came to Accenture by a program through an internship through the Student Empowerment Program, which was a specific program that was focused on women and minorities. It was a 2-summer internship. I started as an analyst, and I'm now a partner that focuses all of our time in consumer goods and services, helping clients change their operating model, leading digital transformations, and really helping execute on their people strategies. I'm super passionate about this topic. My second hat at the firm and my personal passion is really helping drive diversity and inclusion. And one of the other side roles that I play is really helping the Greater Washington Network, Apprenticeship Network, really work through in the DC metro community. How do we help those that don't have 4-year degrees really find a place in large and small organizations? So as we go through, I'm happy to share that perspective and the focus on that in the DC metro and the Baltimore region together.
Thanks so much. And we also have Niela with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naila Meng with Phoenix. I'm very excited to be here. I am the Chief People Officer at the Baltimore City Health Department. The health department has a wide range of responsibilities, including acute communicable disease, animal control, chronic disease, school health, senior services, youth violence prevention, so many resources to help the citizens of Baltimore. We have approximately 900 employees, and the work of the DEI in our organization is really very much entrenched and growing, and we're very proud of the works that we've done thus far, and really excited to talk to everyone here and really get into degrees and the perspectives from the employer's side on degrees and DEI. So thanks, everyone.
Great, thanks, Naila. And then I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Jason Perkins-Cohen. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. I'm a Baltimore guy, born here, went through the public schools, and had the great pleasure of being the director of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We're the city's workforce agency with centers across the city to help youth and adults find their career path. I've spent a lifetime of working to help low-wage workers advance to high-wage jobs, and our agency has taken on the mission of focusing on economic justice and addressing some of the systemic barriers that have been in place affecting or impacting generations of Baltimore residents, especially Black and Brown residents. So we're going to have a great conversation tonight with you. And I thought it would be good, before we really dig into the question, I thought it might make sense just to rewind the clock a little bit, because it's such a crazy, unique time in workforce, right? So for Niela and Anupa, just talk a little bit about the pre-pandemic hiring landscape in your organizations. What was that like? And then what is it like now? Is it maybe it could be the same? You know, every workforce situation is different. How is it similar? How is it different? And then we'll dive into the college degree piece of this. And maybe, sorry, take a little bit, because we skipped over a little bit about your organization. So as you're doing that, maybe just mention, you guys sort of covered it, but sort of how big are your organizations if you didn't, and any other sort of broad strokes about your organization. Let me go to Naila first, and then we'll move to Anupa.
All right, thank you, Jason. So the landscape between what our organization looked like pre-COVID and what our organization looks like during and sort of post COVID hasn't changed that drastically, other than staffing to support the COVID response. Our average turnover has gone up a couple percentage points during COVID due to the Great Resignation. And that's affected so many organizations across America. I read somewhere that the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like between April and September of 2021, it was about more than 25 or 24 million American employees left their jobs, which was like an all-time high. So therefore, this made positions that were hard to fill before COVID even harder to fill during and currently where we are now. So it forces us to rethink, the workforce and really understand how the workforce is changing and the needs of the organization, and to even look at things such as degrees, right? Our organization, we serve the city of Baltimore. We're, to speak a little bit more about the health department, we're 80% female, and 80% African American. So, we really are doing a lot to reflect the communities that we serve. And additionally, with DEI and the DEI work, I guess about a year or so ago, we invested in a DEI director, which I think speaks volumes to how we feel about DEI, right? When you actually are investing in the people and doing the work and, have a department for this, it really shows people and both internally and externally that you are dedicated to this work. So. I pass to Anupa.
Awesome. No, happy to share. So if I take a step back and tell you a little bit about Accenture, we work with big clients, people in our communities around the world to make a difference. We deliver things like consulting services, which are helping a client, fix a business problem, change their operating model. We also provide outsourcing. So if a client or company wants to, give some of the activities that they would traditionally do to a big company to go execute for them, we do that. We do a ton of big technology implementations and analytics work where we partner with some of the largest companies in the world, like SAP and Oracle and Microsoft, to implement some large solutions for some of our big clients. And then we also have a lot of digital agencies where we do help our clients in the creative and the digital space. We're big. We're about a $50 billion company globally. We have about 720,000 people that work for us. We're one of the top 4 largest employers in the world. And we have about 10,000 people in the DC metro area. So it's not small. There's one thing I want to start with is just our focus for the last 3-4 years really has shifted in the D&I space. And quite frankly, it came from the top and the bottom of the organization. It wasn't that one person just said it had to happen. It was a collective look. In order for us to be competitive, in order for us to get the best talent, in order for us to have diverse thoughts, emotions, execution strategies, the only way to do that is to ensure that we're looking at a diverse workforce. So a couple of things that we have put in place is pay equity, right? So as of November 2021, we have a dollar for dollar, 100% pay equity for women in every country in which we operate. Race and equity, likewise, for the dollar to dollar match, 100% in countries in which we collect this data. We have a ton of employee resource service groups. So those like about at the African American community, you have those on the Asian American community, you have those with Jewish community background. We also have those with disabilities. Our D&I spectrum goes across the board. I mean, those are just some examples to ensure that our employees, we promote a sense of belonging and really the continuous feedback loop on what needs to change as things are starting to evolve. Later in this meeting, I'd be happy to share with you some of the metrics that we go through, but I think our focus on D&I has shifted in the last 2 years, pre and post COVID. So pre-COVID, right, we went to certain schools. We were looking at certain qualifications. Most college degrees were required as we went through. And, we were hiring at a pace that was in par with our growth, which is normal. The thing that has changed a little bit since COVID is our demand has skyrocketed. And also the type of work that we do has changed. For example, a lot of digital transformations have been accelerated. How do our consumer goods companies keep the stock, full in our grocery stores, partnering with the largest companies in the world during a global pandemic, and what technology do they need to do that? Do they need better inventory? Do they need better supply planning? So what it really did was it started to open up the eyes that digital transformation was here and digital transformation is here to stay. It opened a lot of new jobs in data science, data engineering, machine learning, applied intelligence, and some of these areas that a lot of companies were a little bit slower to adopt because they didn't see the value. But now it's like an existential crisis because a lot of companies have become technology companies. A lot of companies have become healthcare companies because they need to take care of their people differently. And so the dynamic and the type of work that we're doing is the same as what we did before, but a lot of it has been accelerated. And then the second thing we really focus on is with this exponential growth was a massive opportunity for us to take a look at how do we bring in a more diversified workforce with different skills. And so our apprenticeship program, in which we have committed to hire those without 4-year degrees by 2025 to really help us get diversity in our workforce. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Jason, to take us through a little bit of where Accenture is in our journey.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. I actually will answer the question myself, just because we're a large employer as well. So MOED, Mayor's Office of Employment Development, we have about 200 workers across our agency. We are over in the high 80s, early or low 90s in terms of percentage of workers that are Black and brown. And we tilt pretty heavily female in terms of the gender identification of our staff. I should have brought the percentage, but I didn't. But we definitely tilt that way. I think a couple things in terms of how our work has changed and our agency has changed. I mean, first of all, Niela and I are both in city government, and so we have some restrictions on what we can do to attract talented workers and local talent in particular. And we've tried to work in that construct in terms of, like as a workforce advocate, there's some good that's happening now in terms of the power shift from employers to workers, right? Workers are rightfully demanding what should have been theirs for many, many years in terms of, pay, yes, but also, general work environment, benefits, et cetera. And so we've tried to think more broadly about the environment in which our team works to make it more worker friendly in terms of less, trying to shed as much of the rigidity of government as we can. We can't shed it all because we're not allowed to, but as much as we can in terms of offering flexible workspace, promote professional development opportunities heavily focused on DEI. In terms of the work, I do just want to point out, what's shifted for us is, again, we've sort of tried to take on the role of advocating for workers. We have been an agency that has sort of placed people and tried to make matches between job openings and people looking for work. And we definitely still do that. But now we are very clearly saying to employers, we don't feel good about trying to place people into your jobs because the pay isn't high enough. And we don't just say it, we actually are providing data to say, and we've had some very real conversations with employers, and some of them have been really successful when you provide data and say, here are some similar employers right around you. They're paying $22 an hour. You were offering 18. That's why we don't think we can help you. And in some cases, they're definitely responding, which is pretty great. Not all the cases. That's a different role and one that I think is sort of related to what's going on in the pandemic. I do want to encourage you all to feel free to put in the chat your thoughts about what has changed in the pandemic. So you can do it in terms of questions, but you can also just do it in terms of what you're seeing from your vantage point. So that would be great.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly piggyback
Absolutely.
on really what both of you have been saying is that I recently read an article where it said that 67 or 68% of job seekers were looking for a diverse and inclusive environment. So it's really incumbent upon the employer to provide an environment that people are looking for. So this lets us know that DEI really helps attract and retain top talent. Just looking at this strictly from an HR perspective, right? DEI helps with innovation, because it brings different perspectives and experiences to ensure holistic thought, right? And beyond the moral and ethical consequences, failure to elevate DEI can be costly, right? Discrimination lawsuits, loss of productivity, turnover, all of those kinds of things. So it is extremely important that as employers, we are really thinking through the landscape and what it's going to look like in the future as well.
I love that. And just one comment, Jason, before we go to the next piece is, I can relate to the D&I as I was a young woman, right? And I was a young brown woman coming into the workforce. Everyone has a different part of the D&I that you relate to. One of the things as an employer that I personally focus on is mentorship and sponsorship. And I encourage all of you as you're going through jobs and searching is, how do you find those folks within the organizations in which you're going to work that someone's going to take a chance on you? Because somebody took a chance on me. And it was not because I knew everything. Quite frankly, I didn't know anything. And yes, I did have a 4-year degree and I was very lucky and privileged to have that. However, the type of work I do today does not reflect the type of work I learned in university. And that I can tell you as a fact. And what I did have were certain people that I found within my organization that lifted me. They didn't do it for me, but they lifted me. And as you go through and you find an employer, look for a connection, look for trust, and look for someone who smiles at you. Because at the end of the day, we're human, we're people, and it's I think about getting a job as a two-way street. You're dating them, they're dating you. You know, you've got to meet in the middle and make some compromises. They've got to meet in the middle and make some compromises. But at the end of the day, it needs to be a mutual agreement that this is going to be a home for both people. And I think that sponsorship and your right to ask for sponsorship is 100% legitimate. Don't let anybody ever tell you to say, well, you know, I can't reach out to that person or that person can't help me. I mean, the world is all about who you know, not what you know. And quite frankly, I think as Adina, you know, as I grew up as a young female, up against some things that I was super challenged with, I always had someone sit next to me saying, you can do this. And it's totally fine to do that. So I echo those comments, but I think it's also, you know, look out for who's looking out for you and ask for those folks to have your back. So you don't feel alone going through the process.
That's great. I really appreciate that. And again, what I hope is happening is as the shift in power changes, others feel empowered because they're seeing it, whether it's in the, you know, if it's in their own company, great, that's the best. But if it's not, they're still hearing all the stories of workers or job seekers who are saying, you know, I need more from this. And so hopefully that continues. I do want to just address the first question in the chat, which is about noting that city government salaries are generally too low. I 100% agree with you. And I know that, you know, as a workforce development organization, we are advocating. I know I've been in rooms where Niela is advocating for it as well. You know, the mayor has announced some things for frontline workers, some salary increases. Again, you know, what I've learned in my tenure here is that we have to do some things as an agency on our own. So doing our own salary equity analysis and finding a way, you know, and hopefully the city will broaden its salary structure soon. Okay.
And can I just add one
Absolutely.
little caveat to that? Is that there is so much happening, even in the background, for pay equity within government. And sometimes when you don't see it, you feel like nothing is happening. But we have, you know, the labor commissioner's office, we have even the unions that work with the city. We have DHR, which is the Department of Human Resources. They have a great team in their class and compensation department. And it really is a ginormous effort to help with the pay parity within the city. So, you know, kudos to all of those people who are really working behind the scenes and advocating and pushing things forward, and change is happening.
Yep, and the employers that don't change, whether they're public, you know, city government, state government, whoever, or private sector, they're learning hard lessons. They're the ones who are really struggling to find their workforce. Okay, let's pivot and get into the college degree discussion, right? And so, first of all, I guess Anupa, I want to start with you about why are we having this discussion? Like, why are we concerned about college degrees as a potential racialized barrier or not?
I think, Jason, without sugarcoating it, I think facts are facts and history is history. I think, unfortunately, our history has demonstrated that people of color, our Black communities, our African American communities, our Latino communities, our Black and Brown communities have not had the same opportunities as other people in this country. And to call a spade, you know, it's not why should we do this, it's what happens if we don't do this. Because diversity for us in our organization is, yes, it's in color and race, but it's about your experience. You know, someone who has had a very different life experience and upbringing to somebody else who's done something the same thing every single time one way is not bringing the best thing to our clients. And one of the ways that Accenture has really demonstrated this is that as we started to expand the diversity in our workforce, we are expanding our services, right? We are expanding the type of creative solutions that we're going after, and not just in growth for the company, right? Dollars and cents is one thing, we're finding that our leaders, our people are stepping up to the challenge to go do something bigger than what they thought they could ever do. And so, Jason, hopefully I'm answering your question in the sense that, you know, it historically has been a problem, and four-year degrees is what our leadership has said should not be a barrier to success. You know, I'm an example of that. I studied finance at the Penn State University. It's a wonderful university. I was very privileged and lucky to do that. But what I do now has nothing to do with what I learned in school. I had people that coached me, clients that taught me. I had learned on the job. That is no different from learning how to be a mechanic on the job. It's absolutely no different than learning how to be a hairdresser. Absolutely no different from, you know, these wonderful jobs that you can do, which are all great roles and jobs, but that should not hold people back from moving into corporate America if that is their wish and goal. So, I mean, Jason, one of the things that, you know, we have done at Accenture is we've basically recognized this as a barrier, and we have committed that 20% of our entry-level roles will come from an apprentice program, which is an apprentice, which is basically those that do not have four-year degrees, which is an increase of 15% from what we had last year. And basically, Accenture apprentices receive paid training as we put them in roles and across, you know, application development, cybersecurity, data engineering, and all these interesting things. And basically, the goal, we started this program in 2016, so pre-COVID, so it's not brand new. But we have hired over 1,200 apprentices, and about 80% of them don't have a four-year degree. The majority are ethnically diverse, and nearly half of them are female. And I think as we've seen great success in the way our firm is managing and leading from an apprenticeship program, we are partnering with our local cities. So, you know, Guam being the local Washington, D.C. apprenticeship program. There's one in Chicago. There's one Boston. So, and even in Baltimore, right? We're working through this. How do we expand? How do we make sure everything's equal across the board? But Jason, the key for us has been now partnering with our role at Accenture is not just what we do for our clients and our people, but how do we help educate other employers that this is the direction to go? This is going to help them be successful. But now these are programs that may not be easy. So we also are helping them put the mechanisms in place on how do they partner with other nonprofits or other companies so they can build their respective training programs. So no company will be the same. I think culture is important for every organization. But Jason, I think the two things that it's a no regret move, right? And then it also is just something that we have seen massively successful in the growth of our people. And now, you know, more than ever, it's important for Accenture and the rest of the community to come together to make it a community challenge, not an individual organization challenge, and we have to solve it together.
That's amazing. Thanks so much. And I do want to come back to how do we convince other employers to lift off their college degree requirements as appropriate. Naila, let me come to you, and you know, you're in such an interesting position working at the health department. Obviously, you know, you have doctors who work at the health department, right? Talk about a little bit about the you know, where your agency has come on this concept, and you know, some of the conversations that have evolved.
Sure. To piggyback a little bit, I 100% agree with you, Anupa, on everything that you said. But it's funny. I was with my sister this weekend, who recently got her law degree, and she says, you know, they had to make a new class in law school. It's like, oh, well, what's this new class? She said they have to have a TikTok. They have a TikTok social media law class now because it's opened up this whole new stream of things. And so just that small statement really got me thinking about, well, education needs to change with the times as well. So how we're valuing a degree that you could have got the same degree 50 years ago, the relevancy of that degree to some extent is it still makes sense, right? Do we need to be looking at that kind of in broader strokes as well, right? but, you know, speaking of the health department, going back to your question, yes, there are certainly some positions that require credentials, right? Such as a doctor, a social worker, a laboratory technician. But many of the health department positions that we have the language equivalent combination of education and experience, meaning years of experience count toward the degree requirement. So this is important to note because it certainly gives candidates with the requisite amount of experience an opportunity to compete for the same positions. So, you know, that certainly has been taken into account in terms of hiring people and not creating such a barrier for those positions that could potentially not require a degree, such as a doctor, right? So I can appreciate that because there have been plenty of people who have come through with 20 years of experience versus someone who just has a college degree, and the person with 20 years of experience really is a better fit for that position. They can hit the ground running, they know so much, right? So it certainly opens that up for others to be able to compete.
Thanks for that. And again, I want to invite the folks who are with us attending, please feel free to either drop a question in the chat or just your own thoughts about the issue of college degrees as a racialized barrier as we keep this conversation going. Talk a little bit, if you guys would, about, you know, I think it's, you know, Anupa referenced convincing other employers to do this, right? I think part of getting them there, in addition to showing like why it's a good thing to do and how it can improve your bottom line, is also sort of helping to walk through some of the real conversations that happen when you're really trying to do it. You know, in the moment when you're sitting in a room with some people and you're like, we're talking about removing we've had, you know, Anupa, you referenced, I don't know if you said how long, but for many years, Accenture had really relied on college degrees and has now rolled that back some. Talk a little bit about what those conversations were like. Were they, you know, was it easy? People were like, absolutely, day one, or what did it take? You know, how did the conversation evolve?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll give you a little bit of a vague answer, but then I'll get specific. It really depends. And it depends on two things. Number one, I think it's just getting access to the right person within the organization that has the power and the passion to make a difference and change. And so often when you talk to some of these employers or companies, it's, well, that seems like a lot of work for me, right? In order to bring someone in, train them, give them a great new experience, like that's a lot of work. But now if you talk 4 levels up within that organization, you're talking to the chief people officer, right? You're talking to the CFO, you're talking to someone who has a massive power and passion, which many people in this world do, to be totally fair and clear. You got to get to those folks. And so a part of this, Jason, in my experience has been, let's get to the people that have that. Now, the second thing is looking at the employers that don't have any other choice. And I hate to say it, you know, a gap can be an easy way to solve a problem. And you look at the Great Resignation. I don't know if everyone's heard Beyonce's new song that just came out, you know, this week or yesterday. It's all about walking away from a job or something because it's not the right thing for them. Like, I'm done staying up all night and I'm done doing X, Y, and Z. And so I think there is also this opportunity for our employers who there is a massive war on talent, a massive war. And we can't fill skills and gaps fast enough. And so companies like Accenture are unbelievably lucky to have the infrastructure of an organization backing us to give those that don't have a 4-year degree an apprenticeship, which is training and coaching and guidance and mentorship and all those things that I received on the job, even with a 4-year degree, right? I needed all those things that people without a 4-year degree all need too. And so I think that there's just, is it hard for some people to turn the bend? Yes, it's different. Change is hard. Any change is hard. Do I think it's because they don't want to? It's not. There's always competing priorities. But what it really takes is getting to the right person. And then also when you do talk to the employer, it's also giving them the infrastructure they need to be successful. So like in DC, a lot of organizations partner with organizations like CityWorks, right? CityWorks helps create those training programs, helps build the infrastructure so the employer doesn't have to do it. And so, Jason, this is one of those very creative spaces that every organization can tackle it differently. But once you get a sponsor, once they're educated and once they feel empowered, I think that's what's going to really move the needle. And something that I've learned in my career the hard way is it's progress over perfection. And let's keep chipping away. Let's get everyone rowing in the same direction, and let's make a change. And it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, that's a great point. Naila, how about some of the conversations within the health department? How have they been, how have they gone in terms of eliminating or reducing the impact of the degree?
Sure. So usually the conversation presents itself on a case-by-case basis, right? As you already spoke about, Jason, there's certainly some complexities within government to be able to change things, right? Between union rules, city rules, position classification rules, things like that. But what I've learned and experienced is that partners are always open and receptive to the conversation. So these conversations are usually driven by the difficulty to recruit or promote or retain. And so then those conversations start happening and we can go through the process of changing the minimum requirement for a job. And that happens with other agencies within the city. But I think, kind of piggybacking a little bit on what was already said is that it's really good to, also have a good growth strategy in terms of your workforce, succession planning, those types of things, to have a bench of people to be able to recruit from and to use and to cultivate and to train so that they can take over positions as turnover happens and such. And some of those people won't have degrees, right? And that shouldn't be a problem for them to be able to move into positions once they've gone through your program or whatever you have to say, this person has been vetted, they know their stuff, we're moving them into this next position. And it seems like with Accenture, they've really put together a robust program to be able to take their employee from intern to where you are, Anupa, and that is absolutely commendable, and that's great work on behalf of your organization. And we in the city are certainly trying to do the same, and we're working with our partners at DHR and others to really implement succession planning across the entire city, not just at our particular agency. So it's really exciting times, and I'm really happy to be a part of it.
And you struck something with me. I think the other part of the equation is confidence. So, one of the things I think is, as people are talking to employers and you're unsure, it's asking the question, how are you going to help me be successful? What do you require of me? Those are not silly questions to be asking, right? And, sometimes I'm the only female in the room with a whole bunch of executives that are men. And I have to stand my ground and figure out, how do I get my little mouth to say the big words and get everybody to agree to what it is that I want to do, I really think is the right thing to do. And a little bit of it is confidence. And so I would practice in front of the mirror and say, sometimes before a big meeting, I'm like, these are the 4 things I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to say it. I'm not going to cross my arms. Like, even in this world, like, I'm still doing stuff like that as a partner at Accenture, but there is nothing wrong with practicing. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help and asking your friends. And how do you be a little bit more confident? Because a little bit of confidence can go a long way. As you're talking to employers, even if you don't have it inside you, just a little bit of acting can go a long way.
I just want to highlight, an initiative that we worked on with Niela and the health department called Baltimore Health Corps, where we together brought on 330 residents, mostly as contact tracers. And I want to reference that because when we first started, when we were sort of got to the table and we're like, okay, we're going to hire all these people, we need a PD. those college degree requirements were in, right? Case managers that we needed, college degree requirements were in, and we had to have those hard conversations with, well, why are they in? Like, why do you need a degree? I mean, what are the, and we broke it down this way, like, what are the qualities and characteristics that it takes to be a good contact tracer? Well, you have to be a good communicator, you have to be empathetic, you know, and we started going through those things, and then we looked at, we're like, well, why do you only get those from a college degree? Why can you not be able to demonstrate that you have those qualities by lived experience? And I think that was a seminal moment for both of our agencies, because we got rid of them. They weren't, you know, we removed those requirements and we're able to hire people who but for would not have been able to do it. Now that's 330 jobs. That's not 30,000 jobs. And so we have a long way to go. But I think, to Anupa, to your point, some of it is change is hard. You know, initially it wasn't that we were at the table with people who, you know, have ill intentions. It was like, well, we've always had degree requirements on these things. In my agency, I'm embarrassed to say this, not only do we have degree requirements, we like specified what the degree should be in. I was like, why do I care? Like, I mean, this person might be 35 years old. They haven't been in college in, you know, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is. I don't remember, you know, it's just ridiculous. But you have to be willing both to have the conversation, to challenge the people that are around you. And Anupa, I appreciate, you know, your point about, you know, having the voice and the courage to do that. I think that is completely true, especially like in a pandemic when people are like, we just got to rush. We don't want to change anything. So I think it's a really important example. And, you know, do you guys want to talk a little bit about, you know, the counter arguments to that? I mean, you know, because I can remember a few that I had about like, well, why can we not lift off the degree requirements?
Yeah, I guess I could start. In terms of arguments against it, right? I think sometimes people get very hunkered down into the way things are, right? So change is hard for people, especially if when they came in, this is how it was, right? So changing thoughts can be hard. I think also there's some elitist feelings that people may have. And so someone may say, well, I worked hard and I spent, you know, $100,000 on my degree. And you mean to tell me it's useless now because I could have got this job without a degree, right? So there's certainly some, and I'm sure there's plenty of other arguments, but, you know, I would say that, you know, conversely, you know, somebody with more experience can do the job well, if not better, in many cases than someone with a degree and no experience or very, very limited experience. So why close the door, right, to that person being able to make an impact on an organization?
Yeah, I fully agree. The only thing I would add is sometimes you have to see it. A lot of change happens as you watch something or you experience something. And so some of these folks that maybe haven't seen someone without a four-year degree be successful within their organization, it's really hard, to your point, to really say, do this because this could be successful. We're finding that organizations that are slowly starting to say, okay, we'll do 3 apprentices this year, or we'll do 5 this year, or, you know, they're the ones that are really making the traction, because it is all about change management. Now, the second thing is, for a lot of these organizations that have shareholders, a lot of these organizations that have key customers or clients that they serve, or they're servicing another company, for example, they make like a big consulting firm, right? We have big clients. We work with big companies all over the world. You know, you have some organizations, not Accenture, may feel like, well, would they still buy the same services if they are an apprentice or whatever? And that's where the senior leadership has to make a top-down decision of, doesn't matter. And that's where leaders have to make a bold decision. So I think a little bit is like, what have you done and how do you demonstrate the change? Because otherwise there are barriers, because people are like, we've never seen that work. I don't know if we can do that.
I'm gonna, for our guests, please feel free to put a question in the chat or a comment. I'm gonna ask the panelists one more question. I'm gonna then ask you, if you have questions, to please feel free to say them. If you don't, I have another question in my pocket. So, but, you know, Niela, you referenced the interest in degrees as you know, being elitist. I think part of the question here is the race element, right? I mean, the college degrees are without question a barrier because it's an additional thing you have to have. Is it a racialized barrier? So let me put that tough question to our panelists. Anupa, do you want to take that on first?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do think, but I think if I take a big step back and I look at a couple of the biggest challenges that our society faces, not to get super deep here. One is, I think, race and equity. The second one, I think, is access. And the third one, I think, is education. If we solve those three things together, I think a lot of societal problems would be fixed. And I put access in the heart, Jason, because I think the fact of the matter is a lot of our Black and brown communities do not have the same access to what other people, privileged folks outside of these Black and brown communities have. And what happens is that they are starting at the edge of the football field, 10 yards behind everybody else. And so when you think about, it's not just access as far as knowing which colleges to go to, access to the guidance counselors who can help you make those university decisions, understanding the differences between VOTAC versus a 2-year degree versus a 4-year degree, understanding what your options are, having the access and the funding to go get the college degree and go do, you know, what it is that you know you can do. And then it's an education piece. I think it's a little bit on, I think because our Black and brown communities don't always have the same resources that some of the other ones do, they may not know exactly, Jason, how to tackle these pieces. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question the right way, but for me, it really comes down to, yeah, race is a barrier because our Black and brown communities don't always have the same access. And that's what we need to change. We need to change the fact that we need to give them the right access and the right education so that they know what are their options. Options are power, options is currency. And so that to me is some of the work that is I know a lot of organizations are doing it. You know, Jason and Niela, you're both active and driving and doing big change. There's millions of other people doing the same, but we just got to keep chipping away.
Yeah, it definitely takes these conversations to chip away at it for sure. And you know, based on your question, Jason, I was thinking about the COVID response that our agencies worked on, collaborated together with some other partners, right? Baltimore Health Corps, Mayor's Office, others. And one of the pushes was to hire unemployed and underemployed citizens. And when you look at the data, the majority was people of color, right? So removing that barrier of degree really opened up the floodgates to be able to have that many more people apply. And at a time when speed was important, because the pandemic was happening, regardless of how fast or slow we were moving to be able to respond to it, right? And so just using that as an example of how it is or can be a barrier for people to have opportunities. And one of the things that I thought was really great and a testament to Jason's team is that, you know, MOED was instrumental in creating a transition for those people who were transitioning out of the COVID response to continue to be gainfully employed in other positions as they rotated off of the COVID response. And I'm sure they too looked at, you know, degrees and any types of barriers that would hinder those people from being gainfully employed after working in this response.
And I would just add, you know, yes to both of your comments. And I would just say, you know, like, I think what we all know, right, which is the generational and systemic disinvestments in our communities that are majority Black and brown, and the individuals themselves didn't start at age 14, 18, 22, or 30 when someone's looking for a job. It starts at birth. It actually starts pre-birth, right? And so if that, all those systemic disadvantages make it harder for people to go to colleges and go to the elitist colleges that hopefully in the past people were looking for. And so it's, to me, it's at least definitely a racialized barrier. I want to get to, Cheryl has a question in the chat, and I'll just go ahead and read it as Cheryl wrote it. She asked for our thoughts on offering career path strategy conversations at the beginning of recruiting and orientation to encourage retention. What are your guys' thoughts on that one?
Oh my God, that would be amazing. I'm not there yet, but the concept of that is great, right? Because don't you do that at college, right? You come in, you talk to the college counselor, hey, what do you want to do? How do you see yourself growing? What should you major in? What are your likes, right? All those types of things. That would be great. That would be great if we could do that.
And they definitely are programs that do it. You know, 5 years ago, I took a 5-month sabbatical from the firm just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And basically, I worked through junior achievement, and I had the opportunity to teach in DC public schools. And I taught a group of 10th graders. It was like a 12-week course for 2 hours a week on career success. But basically, it was just an education course of like, what is a 4-year degree? What is a 2-year degree? What is a law degree? How do you figure out what energizes you? Because look, what energizes me in corporate America may not be what energizes you from being creative and getting a job in a music studio or doing something completely like outrageous that I in my world could never imagine to do. But what I did was help take these students through a prepackaged curriculum, right? I did not create it. It was through Junior Achievement, an unbelievable organization. And, you know, I was out there just helping 10th graders figure out their path. And so I do encourage folks that are trying to figure out where they want to go, or where are some programs in your local communities with folks that are working really hard through these nonprofits that maybe you join a class or two or figure out, you know, what are your options? Because I know that they definitely exist. And my eyes were so wide open because I'd ask in the class, I'd say students, I'd ask all these questions in the class. They'd all be really shy and not really ask questions in the room. I left the room and I had 50 emails. Miss Anupa, did blah, blah, and I'm like, guys, speak up. And they, in that moment, they're like, we don't want to be the one that doesn't know. And so what I realized with this process is they are not alone. You are not alone. I am not alone. And you got to kind of find some of these resources and these tools that may be able to help you think about career pathing. And also realize what you do to start does not need to be what you do forever. Like in my 12 years, I've had so many different roles and jobs I can't even count. Some I was really good at and some I was really bad at, right? And that's okay. So part of this is also just, sometimes getting your foot in the door, trying something. You learn more from things you don't want to do than things you do want to do and things you are really good at.
And I think it's like really important, all that, yes, Anupa. I think it's really important if an employer is not ready or at a stage where they can offer, planning and the onboarding stages, to be able to offer opportunities while the employee is employed, right? So maybe there's a learning development process or some type of a succession planning process that they can go through and get training and things like that. That is really important in terms of workforce development and ensuring that you retain your top talent, right? So just adding that small caveat. And
I would just add, like in our world, if, we say like, if you wait to focus on job retention for the person to get the job, you are too late. You know, the job retention conversations and supports have to happen before. So I actually totally agree with Cheryl's, what I think is where her question's coming from. And again, all the more reason why we need to make sure that we have opportunities at the youngest age, paid internships, et cetera. I think if I'm understanding the chat correctly, is there someone from ABC who wants to jump in on this? Okay, I may have misunderstood. Okay, I just want to acknowledge Logan's question, which is a great one. It's in the chat, and he's asking some questions about the concept of apprenticeship. I appreciate Anupa with the fast fingers jumping right in. I don't have much to add other than to say, I think apprenticeship is a misunderstood concept. I think Anupa is completely right. Like, we don't have to think of it so rigidly. And I know, like with MOED, like we are now funding apprenticeship as well. Like, we're supporting employers who will hire a Baltimore City resident as an apprentice. We're paying for that first year to cover their costs to encourage more apprenticeships, because the beauty of apprenticeship is it's earn and learn, and you will get, you're learning and you're developing your skills, earning a wage, and then there's built-in increases along the way. Anupa, I don't know if you wanted to add anything from your chat you covered.
No, the only thing I would say is that in any organization, what I've learned is titles don't matter. Like, anywhere you work, you could be the mayor, you could be the analyst that sits outside the CEO's office, you could be an executive assistant, you could be the chief chef in that restaurant. People are people. And so whether an organization calls it an apprenticeship, an internship, a learn as you go program, you know, as long as you understand, we all understand what it is and what you're going to get out of it. I think the term, try not to let the term and the titles ever hold you back. I try not to let it, because I think that can get pretty hard. And am I just an intern, or am I just this? And, you know, that could get really, really tough. But I don't think the term shows back, and I don't think all the organizations are using it the same way. So it's more so to understand what is the program that sits underneath it, and is it a good fit for any of us.
So last call for questions from the audience. I will pause briefly, and then I will ask one last question. You guys, Anupa and Niela, you guys are amazing, and you're clearly champions of this work, right? So what advice, and Anupa, you were sort of just doing it with your previous answer, but what advice do you have for, you know, folks who are on the call, or folks who are going to see this in the recording of this, about, you know, how do they make a difference in their own organizations or in their communities on this particular topic of racial, college degrees, and helping to reduce the impact or eliminate them altogether?
So I can jump in. You know, just looking at it from an employer perspective, my advice for others and other employers would be, don't be afraid. Ultimately, it's okay to have those tough conversations. Make sure that you get the support of your leadership, and try and incorporate these initiatives into your strategic plan, so it really starts to become the vernacular of the people, right? Change is far from easy, and you have to be okay with really getting people out of their comfort zones, especially in this DEI space. But ultimately, all your hard work will eventually have a positive impact on the organization, and will lead to a better work environment for employees, and better productivity, and overall outcomes will be better. So just keep at it, don't stop.
Yeah, I love it. The only two things I'd add is, if it feels like you're running towards fire, it probably feels right. Because, you know, you'll get close, you may get burned, you'll walk away, you'll get a little bit closer. So sometimes I have to like pinch myself to say, okay, this is kind of what it's supposed to be, because what we're doing is really hard. And then the other thing I would say is, like, it's really easy to compare yourself to a bunch of other organizations, right? Like people like Accenture, man, you guys do this really well. You know, I would encourage you to only compare yourself to an earlier version of yourself, right? You can't control what everyone else is doing. you know, everyone's organizations and people's circumstances are all at a different place. So to the extent that you can feel like you are where you are and you're chipping away and you're taking baby steps, and every time you look back, you're kind of saying, okay, one step forward, one step forward. It doesn't have to be one step full forward, not one step back, because you're still running towards the fire. But it's as long as you're feeling like you're taking one step forward, I think that can be great in a way that works for you, your organization, and for you individually.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all your thoughts. I can't let this moment go. Sorry, I'm just seeing a note in the chat without acknowledging Diane Bell McCoy. I think she may have been here or be here with us. Her amazing leadership at Associated Black Charities. You know, I'm in awe. She's here. Diane, I don't know if you want to jump on and say anything to us. I just want to say how much I am inspired by you and admire you, and so grateful to be have the opportunity to have worked with you. Okay. All right, everybody. I think I'm empowered to close it. I don't know, Deb or Kenny, if there's any other closing out or not. Otherwise, thank you all so much, and please follow on social media and let your colleagues know about this conversation and pass it around.
Jason and everyone, I just want to say thank you. She just unmuted me.
Hey.
So I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Jason, for stepping in terms of just lots of conflicts going on for me. But I really wanted this conversation. Anupa, I am so sorry we didn't get a chance to meet in person vis-a-vis Zoom, but I will make sure I follow up. And now you know how much I absolutely adore you in terms of that. And I don't know, Jason, you know that I actually knew her before this. I knew her many years ago in this space in terms of a different place. And so wonderful conversation I was enjoying, and all the things I hope that this as a recording will also be a powerful tool for the very things that you all just talked about, having other businesses and other employers consider this journey. Thank you. It makes such a difference. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful night. Diana, you're amazing.